Well, good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Manufacturer and Business Association's member engagement briefing on rising energy cost, how to mitigate your risks and exposure. My name is Patty Welther, and I'm on staff here at the association. Before we get started, I want to remind everyone we are recording today's webinar. And also, if you have questions, please feel free to either raise your hand or use the chat box. Both of them are located at the very top of your screen. Or as we said earlier, you can just shout out your question as well. We're fine with that. Today's speakers are Eva Kernan. She's the manager of broker operations at Bid Your Energy. She's been employed in the energy sector for over 6 years. Now, she's worked with a vast array of clients ranging from small manufacturers to large college campuses. Most recently, she began leading operations at BUE by optimizing and organizing their processes and procedures. Since 2020, her focus has been leading a majority of the analyst team and implementing efficiencies across each of BUE's departments. She's a graduate of Westfield State University in Massachusetts, and she studied mathematics and business management. Judy Rossetti is the energy advisor for the Manufacturer and Business Association. For the past 7 years, she has worked closely with the team from BUE and has saved the MBA members hundreds of thousands of dollars over the course of her time. She has a bachelor's degree from Edinburgh University in Communications Graphics and is a lifelong resident of Erie. And now, without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Judy and Eva.
Thanks, Patty.
Sure.
I think I have control now. Yes. Hello, everybody. Good morning. Thanks for joining us today. We're going to discuss several topics, including crude oil versus natural gas, how the Russian invasion of Ukraine affects U.S. energy market, why Europe primarily relies on imports to meet their natural gas needs, how that affects us here domestically, utility, cybersecurity, insurance premiums that are doubling, what what role clean energy can serve, and how to mitigate energy supply agreements. So, and then we'll have some key takeaways, and you'll be able to, as Patty said, ask any questions during, we don't have to wait until the end. So, crude oil versus natural gas. Historically, why do people think that the two are correlated? There's a term, intercommodity spread. When one item costs more, the other becomes cheaper. Basically, what they're saying is because natural gas is a byproduct of drilling, it means that natural gas would unintentionally decrease in price, but I guess it increases in supply. You would think because of a higher supply, the rate would be lower. But in this case, it's not happening. Eva, do you want to kind of interject there?
Yeah, so because naturally, when you're drilling for oil, it's a byproduct of natural gas. We're increasing our supply artificially, where our demand would be relatively the same. And recently, due to current events, our demand is increasing exponentially by us exporting a lot of our liquid natural gas to Europe and Asia to help in efforts. And therefore, we're still drilling the same amount, but now our demand has increased, and that's what causes prices to increase as well.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So this is just a fun fact, and I have to read this to you. In 2020, over 230 million megawatt hours of electricity was generated in Pennsylvania, exceeding electricity generation in all states except for Texas and Florida. Of the 230 million, 78 million megawatt hours of electricity generated was delivered delivered to neighboring states. So when politicians talk about being an energy powerhouse, or Pennsylvania being an energy powerhouse, it's totally got the potential to be there. And we just thought that was kind of an interesting fact. Okay, so this is the big topic in the news: how the Russian invasion of Ukraine affects the U.S. energy market. So what you have is Europe depends on Russian supplies for natural gas. And Russia is also a major producer of global energy supplies, I'm sorry, Russia is also a major oil producer. Global energy supplies are tight and prices are high. Natural gas prices have generally trended upward since October. And that was because of the increase in demand, because we were coming off the pandemic and the lockdowns, and demand was low. So historically, coal was always used for the production of, or the primary use of production of electricity. And then after the polar vortex 2015, 2016, that sort of flipped, and natural gas, because of its cost effectiveness, became the primary for the production of electricity. Now that natural gas prices are increasing, it's interesting because coal is now more competitive. So you see an increase in the usage of coal and coal production for the manufacture of electricity. And in fact, coal production was up 38%, almost 40% from the same time in 2021. So,
Question.
yes.
When you say coal production is up, are you talking US or worldwide?
Eva?
You know?
That would be US.
US, okay.
Yeah. So, what will cutting off Russian oil do? Some economists predict the invasion and resulting sanctions to crippling the Russian economy will further raise energy costs. This can add stress to an already high electricity and heating bills and gasoline prices. As for new generation projects, fossil fuels may still face the most scrutiny because of their contributions to climate change, but fear of rising costs could affect renewable energy proposals currently seeking approval from utility regulators. And then additionally, nearly 16% of the uranium used in civilian nuclear power plants is imported from Russia. So there's a lot going on. So now that Europe relies primarily on imports to meet its natural gas needs. And Russia, I'm sorry, wrong. So basically it's through pipeline and LNG imports, provided more than 80% of the gas supply to the countries in the UE and the UK in 2020. The natural gas pipeline imports is 74%. LNG is 26%, and 20% of that LNG is supplied to the UE and UK alone. You've got gas imports from Russia, Norway, North Africa, and Azerbaijan. And Russia is the largest supplier in the region. They have increased imports from about 11 BCF per day in 2010 to more than 13 BCF per day in 2020. So for perspective, in the past 10 years, Russia has increased its imports to Europe and Asia to cover an additional 2 million homes. That's just trying to give you an idea of what the BCF actually relates to. In November, Putin decided to cut ties with the rest of the world. And basically, that was the equivalent of cutting energy to 13.5 million homes. So that's nearly the equivalent of the entire state of California. So clearly he had a plan, master plan, and this happened. We also saw at that time in November, a spike in energy rates of, was it 70%? It didn't last, but it was definitely a spike in the market. And it didn't last at 70%, but it's still high. So cyber threats are all over the news. Well, let me move my. And utility cybersecurity insurance premiums are doubling. Basically, cybersecurity insurance rates are increasing in the energy sector, but electric utility premiums have not yet increased. So renewing cyber insurance is about 20 to 30% higher than it was in the past. For perspective, if we look at like healthcare insurance premiums, if you just look at the ACA, Affordable Care Act, it's gone up 10 to 15% per year. So these are kind of double that. Electric utilities procure insurance through industry mutual insurers. Basically, it's a group purchasing agreement. The need to expand the grid equipment in the US could drive the cost of security and resilience, but energy leaders are trying to find ways to mitigate the costs to themselves, which means they're going to pass it along to the end user customers. So we expect to see increases because of that as well. Well, everybody wants to know what role clean energy can serve. So clean energy can provide less reliability on coveted commodities like oil, especially those from other countries. The other thing that clean energy could do domestically, and here's kind of the caveat. So because Russia's cutting off everybody, and the UK and the UE are going to have to depend on the US to get their LNG. It's more expensive overseas than it is domestically, it being LNG. And so your generators who are looking to make a profit are going to want to sell their product overseas where they can make a higher profit versus keeping it here domestically. That's going to cause our prices to increase because, again, supply and demand. So the use of clean energy could help alleviate some of that, where we're not competing against our own generators. However, I think we're a long ways away from all of that. The other thing is our LNG exports are expected to increase by 16%, but our production is only increasing by 2%. So again, it's a supply and demand. And it is what it is, I guess. So for you folks, what you want to know is how can I limit my exposure? And the next few slides are going to talk about where you are currently. So do you have contracts already? Are you with the utility? So let's say you have a contract that expires within the next 3 to 6 months. You've got a couple different options. The first option is to lock into a short-term agreement right now, maybe for 6 to 12 months. That's going to limit your exposure. It's going to help what's happening in the world or the global, conditions. That's going to help limit your exposure right now. The con with that is a short term is going to take into effect the high market right now. So you're going to pay more in that 6 to 12 months. If you were going to do that, what we would recommend is that you then lock into a second agreement at the same time. What's happening is you're pushing out that next agreement to a different start time. And we do see that some rates are coming down lower in the future, not by a whole lot, but the chances of getting a lower rate then are better. So you're kind of averaging it out. You might pay more now and less later. It's, it's something to look at anyway. The other alternative is you could sign a long-term agreement. So if your contract expires in the next 3 to 6 months, you could look at signing something for 24 or 36 months. So the caveat there is you're signing a long-term contract when the market's high. The way to help with that is a lot of suppliers will offer what's called a blend and extend. So let's say that you sign a 36-month agreement, and in look, chances are right now we're not seeing any energy relief until early 2025. But let's say the market, something happens and rates reduce. The suppliers will look at what the market is currently, where you're priced at, and they'll average it out. So they'll extend your agreement and reduce your costs immediately, but just kind of average it out. So we've had success with that in the past with many members to be able to do something like that. So it limits your risk, but you're still, you know, at some level of risk. The other thing is, let's say you have a contract that's not expiring for another 12 months or more. So you could look at or consider being able to sign an agreement now. And it sounds crazy because I know a lot of our members are in rates that are super low right now because they signed maybe 2-3 years ago, and they're, you know, doubling, sometimes tripling what they are now. And they're looking at it saying, well, I'm 12 months down the road. I don't want to make that decision now. Problem is, again, the futures market is showing us where we're going to be in 12 to 24 months. And we don't see relief until sometime in 2025. And that has been being pushed out. Like we were, I want to say 6 months ago, maybe 8 months ago, we saw that the market was increasing, and relief looked like it might be end of 2023. Then it got pushed out to beginning of 2024, then pushed to, you know, mid to end 2024. Now we're looking at it at 2025, beginning of 2025. And depending on what, you know, happens in the next several months / years, you know, it could get pushed out more. So again, locking in for a longer term. The futures market is high right now, starts to, you know, settle and then maybe go down right now in the beginning of 2025. So again, you're kind of averaging out your risk, but at least you're locking in, you've got budget security, and you know what you're going to pay, if that makes sense. Can you add anything, Eva? Or are you good?
No, that sounds about right.
Okay. Did I miss one? Okay, so this is part 2, I guess. Okay, so what if you were to go back to the utility? So some people, you know, it might be the smart thing to do is just drop back to the utility. Right now, in certain utility areas, the PTC, or price to compare, is lower than what fixed options are. The problem with going back to the utility is that it changes every 3 months. And so the utility by law is not permitted to make a profit on supply. On distribution, most certainly, but on supply, they're not. So by law, they cannot make a profit. So what they do is every 3 months, they look at what they brought in the previous period. If they made too much, they give back in the form of lower rates the following 3 months. If they didn't make enough to cover their costs, they increase the rate the following 3 months, and so on. They're always behind because of that. So what we've seen is the market, and the utility buys directly from the market. So they're not getting any discounts. They're buying directly from the market. Problem is the market's super high right now. So if the utility is lower than price to compare, or I'm sorry, if price to compare is lower than what fixed options are, chances are it's going up in 3 months. If you think you can wait until the month before, because typically they'll release what those rates are going to be the month before, but we've seen them as short as the week before. They, you know, they don't release them. And if at that time their rates go up, chances are any fixed rate options are going to go up at the same time. So if you, sometimes it's better to lock in, even if it's higher than the current utility costs, because we know that the utility is going to go even higher after that. Again, it's a risk factor. We talk to our members to try to determine what's best for them, what is their risk tolerance, and, you know, go from there. Sometimes you can just sign a short term at the end of, like what we've recommended is, okay, so we know that the utility is going to be this for 3 months. Let's get you locked into a rate beginning at the next period. And so you can take advantage of that 3-month lower rate, but typically we know it's going to go up. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. So here's some of your key takeaways, I'd say. Due to the world crisis, the market is extremely volatile right now. We know that. Rates are expected to remain high until 2025. I kind of explained that in the last slide, but that date keeps getting pushed out. And we're just basing that off the futures market. It's what the future market determines. It's really anybody's guess, but these are the professionals that we rely on. Signing a fixed contract can help mitigate rising costs and provide you with stability. So it's basically just budget security. And then honestly, just use our expertise to make an informed decision about your energy costs. Even I have a team of analysts, and collectively we've been in the market, all of us, for 40 years. So we have 40 years of experience behind us. And it's, it's helpful to have someone that you can trust and count on. And even if you're using someone else, we're happy to just, give you advice on whether we think that's a smart move or not, or vet a supplier. If you've gotten a call and you don't know who they are, I can look at them and I can let you know if they're a decent supplier, if we work with them, if we don't work with them for a reason. And it's the reason that we're here. It's a free service of the MBA, and we want to make sure that everybody's aware of it. And I think that's it. Those are just our sources. Eva, do you have anything to add?
No, I think you covered it all. And I guess right now would be the time for questions if you didn't ask them earlier during the presentation.
How long a contract can you get in this?
How
Because
long?
Yes. Is it like 3 years the longest, or?
Eva?
No, it really depends on when your current expiration date. If it's right now, typically suppliers can go anywhere from 3 to 4.5 years, depending on how long they've purchased futures for. Majority of folks, I say, usually average a 2 to 3 year contract. So it's a standard term that we use, but a lot of suppliers can go more than that. Yes.
The reason I'm asking, I don't know if my thinking is logical or not. If what I'm hearing is the price relief won't be out there for 2 more years plus.
Right.
That if you get a contract now, it's going to sort of blend all the high costs of the next 2-3 years, and maybe a lower cost beyond that.
Correct.
Well, I'm thinking if you go even farther and blend more lower costs in years 26, 27, I don't know how far out they could even project. Would that get the average down we've got a contract, I think, renews end of December.
Oh,
We've
okay.
got 2 manufacturing facilities. We typically have gone 3-year contracts, but staggered them so that they don't both mature at the same time. And we can sort of, take advantages of moving prices, but sort of struggling with what to do with this one it's still 9 months out. It's still going to be here before we know it.
Right.
What my approach might be, but what I'm hearing from you is not good. It's that the prices are going to be higher. And I'm just trying to see, well, how could they best mitigate that?
Right.
And I understand crystal balls are murky, but got to make a call here at some point. If I wait till the very end, Do we risk even more world turbulence
Right.
or will things be calmed down by that? Who knows?
Yeah.
Who knows?
So
Right.
one of the things that waiting till the end, what happens is suppliers buy their energy in bulk, way out. And when you get closer to a contract start date or end date, depending, um, your options are less available. So there's fewer options from suppliers, and then um, the volatility of the current market. So it's always smart to do it sooner than later. And then we have seen a couple different things. To your point, that putting it out, 48 months. Um, and we've talked about that, Eva. What are
Mhm.
the pluses and minuses to that?
Yeah, so pushing it out, like you said, it blends in a little bit more of the lower market. It's only, let's say, 1 year as opposed to the 2 or 3 years that are high. So it will lower it, but how much is kind of a guess. The pro to that is you avoid all of the volatility that's happening right now. The con, let's say, to that, if the market does plummet back down to normal levels in 2024, you're paying a higher rate. But again, that's what Judy said about the blend and extend. If that supplier offers that product, you can blend that lower rate into your current contract and even extend it another 6, 12, 18, 24 months past the current end date. So it's kind of like you're renewing in between your current contract.
But
Okay.
reducing your rate immediately.
Yep.
Okay.
So it is an option. The other thing is we've done to capture, like, depending on how your two accounts are and like their load factors and stuff, it might make more sense to contract them separately. But we've also done staggered starts so that you can aggregate the usage of both accounts, but maybe have different, start times so that you might get a lower rate with a higher volume.
Mhm.
I see.
And
Okay.
depending on the size too, you can do different products, different type of fixed products that you can kind of control which component of an energy price that is higher or lower. It also depends on risk, but a lot of it initially depends on size, and then afterwards we can talk about risk or different strategies as when to like hedge prices or things like that. So
The other thing too, and depending and if you're so your capacity tag changes every June 1st, and people don't recognize what that means. But if cap tags increase, your rates are going to increase because it's just the nature of the business. But there is a way that we can help you um, possibly. If once your cap tag goes up, the only thing we can do is help you that year to make it go down the following year. And Eva, do you want to explain how that works?
yeah, we call it cap track. What we do is put you on a distribution list, and during moments of, typically it's high weather or high alert on the grid, um, send out an email. If you can afford to reduce your energy at that point in time, you can. It's different than demand response, if you've ever heard of that, because it's not necessarily a transaction. It's just more of a notification. And we notify you anytime that there's what seems to be stress on the grid. There's no payment, there's no clawback, there's no
There's no
penalties.
obligation.
There's no obligation. Yeah. So if you can do it that day, great. If you can't, but chances are we historically have captured 3 to 4 out of those 5 hours. So we have been able to help customers mitigate their capacity costs in that regard.
It's typically during August-ish
Yeah.
where there's the
Yeah.
highest temperatures. And so it's an educated guess, but what happens is, it's the PUC that takes the readings, right? Or is it the utility that takes the readings?
The utility will take the readings.
So they'll take the readings during the highest, heaviest days, I'd say highest temperatures during the year. And the time frame is usually 3 to 5 or,
Yeah, it's just the peak hour on the grid usually. Yep.
and so if your production is, or your usage is very high during that time, and it might not normally be that high, but you might have, who knows what, that's what causes capacity tags to increase because they're only capturing a small time. But if you happen to be using a lot of electricity at that time, you're caught.
Right. Yeah, they're
Does that make
capturing
sense?
5 out of 8,760 hours of the year.
Yeah.
So
So you guys can predict when they're gonna choose those capacity tag hours?
I wouldn't go so far as to say predict, but we do try to give you all of the possible options. And then usually we capture anywhere from, like I said, 3 to 4 of those 5 hours.
Okay. Interesting. Well, you certainly gave us some things to think about here this morning.
Mhm.
And it's nice to know we got a resource at the MBNA. If we need some, it's like we've used an independent energy advisor. We don't expect to be experts at this. We're a manufacturing company. We
Right.
don't know that this energy market is so complicated as your presentation says. Not just the market itself, but then world events and all that. They even
Exactly.
compounded even dramatically. So we're looking for outside advice and expertise to help us make a good deal for our company. So
Right.
as
Happy
you
to
go
help.
through this year, we'll reach out to you as we need, and we're working on it. And we appreciate knowing you're out there to help us.
Yeah,
Thank you.
thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thanks for attending. And, you know, it definitely, I would say my big takeaway, it sounds like it's a very individualized approach and we're here to help. And, you know, if there's anything you're unsure of or we can assist, give us a call here at the association. And, you know, Judy and Eva, they will 100% be in your corner to help you out and figure out what the best strategy is for you, your company, your business, and reducing your energy cost.
So thank you very much. It's good to know.
Thank
Thank you.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Have a good
everyone.
day, everybody.
You all have a
Okay.
wonderful day.
Thank
Goodbye.
you. Have a good
Bye.
day.